John, and on the eighth day of Christmas, we are going to be talking about infidelity. I know that it's not exactly the feel good topic of the year, but it is a very real issue and it comes up all the time in Texas divorces. So I want to talk about it in a way that is open, honest, and hopefully not too soul crushing. So, first things first, infidelity hurts, right? It sucks. And when somebody cheats, it hits on a bunch of levels all at one time. It affects your trust, it affects your pride, it affects your sense of security, uh, it affects your picture of what your future was supposed to look like. And it's not dramatic to take a step back and admit that it's an awful, awful feeling, right? It stings and it's just terrible. And you might, feel angry one minute and you might feel numb the next minute and you might feel weirdly okay with it the minute after that. And that's a totally normal response. Uh, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means that you're having a very human reaction to a very painful situation. But let's separate, the whole issue into two aspects, right? There's the emotional earthquake of it all, and then there's the legal reality of infidelity in Texas. And while they may overlap, they are not the same thing. Okay. So first, I kind of want to look at how Texas views infidelity, right? How Texas law views infidelity. Uh, so in Texas, any divorce uh, falls into one of two categories, right? There is no fault divorce, in which case, there's no bad guy, right? The marriage has become insupportable and you're going your separate ways. That is, that's one route to take. The other route to take is a fault-based divorce. And fault-based divorces uh, involve you actually being able to point to a reason, to a legal reason for the divorce. And adultery is one of those legal reasons. Now, when you file for a fault-based divorce, you have to be able to prove it. There has to be hard evidence to be able to prove that this infidelity took place. He said, she said, I heard from one person, they heard from another. It's not going to fly. It has to be hard evidence. And if proven, a judge can take it into account when dividing up property. Um, when you're talking splitting up money, when you're talking about spousal maintenance, which is also known as alimony sometimes. Um, However, a couple of key points. If one spouse does cheat, that does not mean that the other spouse is going to, automatically walk away with everything, right? It doesn't automatically make the cheating spouse a bad parent in the eyes of the court, right? The fact that infidelity took place is a factor that will be taken into account, but it is not the whole story, right? Judges in Texas have to divide community property in a way that is just and right, which is just fancy legal language for, given all the facts, what is fair here? And infidelity can be one of those facts, right? Especially if community funds were spent on the affair. What some they go on trips or gifts or hotel rooms, that kind of thing. They those kind of things will can be taken into account when splitting up property and funds and things like that. The other really important thing to consider here is the children, right? So people often ask, will the judge take my kids away from them because they cheated? Or will my affair mean that I'm losing my children? And in most cases, the answer is probably going to be a no. Uh, Texas courts care about the best interests of the child. And infidelity by itself usually doesn't decide custody, right? It only really matters if the affair created an unsafe or harmful situation for the kids, or if maybe the parent is neglecting the kids because they're too wrapped up in this other relationship. So so cheating can affect custody, but it's not because the judge is in the business of punishing the bad spouse, right? It's the judge is in the business of protecting the kids and doing what is in the best interests of the children, right? Now, if you were the one that was cheated on, your brain is probably going a million miles a minute, right? Do I should I blast them with screenshots? Should I move out right this second? Should I get on that stand and tell this judge, every sordid, dirty little detail, right? How can I make them pay for what they've done to me, right? If you're the one who had the affair, you might be thinking, did I just ruin my life? Am I going to lose everything? Will I ever see my kids again? And the truth is, the law is much more boring and structured than those, worst case scenarios, right? The law is not about public shaming or revenge. The law is about splitting up money, property. Uh, it's about making sure that your kids are taken care of. It's about safety and how all of those things get rearranged now that the marriage may be ending. That's what we're that's what the divorce is for, right? Now, if there's one big thing I want you to take away from this, it's that before you do anything big, before moving out, before draining bank accounts, before firing off a bunch of angry text messages, take a step back, take a breath, and try to have one calm conversation with a Texas family law attorney. Right? Just one conversation. Because the little choices that you make in those first few days or first few weeks can have real consequences, right? Financial consequences, custody consequences, and emotional consequences that can drag out a divorce case for way longer than it needs to be. That one meeting with an attorney can help you understand whether adultery should even be raised legally in your case. It might show you how it might affect property and support in your specific situation, or give you a plan so you're acting on strategy and not just adrenaline. Infidelity is a huge plot twist, right? It can absolutely flip your life upside down for a while, but it doesn't have to be the end of your story. I've seen people rebuild their finances, rebuild their relationships with their children, and most importantly, rebuild a sense of self that is not defined by somebody else's betrayal. The legal process is there to help put some structure around a situation that feels really, really chaotic. And when you bring your feelings into these things, the lawyers try to bring these frameworks, and somewhere in the middle, you start building that next chapter. So if infidelity is part of your reality right now, whether you're the one that was hurt or you're the one that made the mistake, you don't have to guess your way through it, right? Talk to someone who understands the Texas law, who can walk you through your options in a calm and judgment free way. Like I said, infidelity sucks, and you're allowed to hurt. But you are also allowed to heal. You're allowed to move forward, and you absolutely do not have to do it alone. Thank you. And I hope you have a great holiday season.